Make yourself comfortable, and thank you for joining this evening's Wanderlust event, which we're joined by our friends at Intrepid Travel, and we're going to be talking about all things Antarctica, which, yes, we're going to be touching as well, if anybody asks, on South Georgia, the trips that you can do that also combine South Georgia and the Falklands. So lots of good stuff to talk about. And welcome to Tansy from Yorkshire, first in the chat box. So great to have you there, Tansy. Colin from Bournemouth. Hello to Peter in a wet Bowden in Cheshire. Yes, I think the weather is very autumnal here in the UK. And but of course, we're going to be talking about snowy and icy climes tonight. Not so much about the rain. Welcome to David from Portugal, Mary from Dublin, Liz and David from Aberdeenshire. Lots of people coming on tonight. Hello to Rebecca in, gosh, you got off the screen already. Edu, how did you pronounce your name, Edu? Back in the Basque Country, welcome. Helen in Cumbria, Jackie in Sussex, Mark and Kim here from Cambridge. Welcome, everybody. I see we've got an awful lot of people here tonight, so I'm not going to be able to mention everybody, but you're all very, very welcome. And lovely to see people from all around the world as well. So welcome to Anne from Massachusetts. Great to have you on here tonight. John from York, going in February to Antarctica. Jealous. That's going to be wonderful. Hello to Martin in Essex. Not quite as exciting as Antarctica, but I shouldn't be mean, should I? You must be fed up. Oh, why does my software want to do a software update? Hopefully got rid of that. Hello to Marlies. Is that how we pronounce your name? From Cape Town. Apologies if I've got it wrong. Welcome. Hope it's nice and warm there. Hello to Guy from Somerset, who has spent lots of years in the Falklands. That must have been interesting. And to Roger in Milton Keynes, Martin in Brecon Beacons, and we've got Gail on from Pittsburgh, who says she'll be visiting Antarctica in December. Wonderful. And who else have we got? We've got Jackie in Spain. And another Jackie Bishop's going in November. See, we've got several people here, already got trips planned. How fantastic. Welcome to Helen. Looking forward to a trip in January to Antarctica. And yeah, so a few people there, which is great. Asha says she can't hear anything. So not sure what we can do about that. We'll try and send you a message, Asha. We'll try and find out what's happening. And welcome to Esther from Rugby, who also spent a couple of years in the Falklands. That must be so fascinating. We'd love to know more about that. And Caroline. Now, Caroline, you are showing off. Sorry. Hi from Essex. Off to the Falklands, South Georgia, and Antarctica in November. Oh, good grief. Mark, when are you next going to Antarctica? You're going to be bumping into some of these people at this rate.
Yeah, very likely late December. Yeah.
Late December. Yeah. Well, you might meet some of these people as a few are going.
Yeah, it's a nice period just between the young chicks maturing gradually to being slightly older. So it's a really nice halfway house. So.
Brilliant. And Simon, when are you going?
Yeah, I'm off end of November, beginning of December as well. So just before Mark. So yeah, very much excited about that. Can't wait.
Yeah. So well, it sounds like you might bump into one of these two of these people. Because looking very good. So I presume the people who have already got trips planned, they're just going to want to get even more excited and find out more, really get in the mood for it. And Lisa's booked for 2024. Brilliant. Anyway, that still means there's a lot of people who haven't been. So I know this evening we're covering all sorts of stuff about Antarctica, really inspire you, but also give you lots of information. And we do actually find at Wanderlust that whenever we ask our readers which destination in the world is on their ultimate wish list, Antarctica is always right up there. So this evening we've got, as you can see, two great speakers. We're going to be hearing first from award-winning travel writer Mark Stratton. I'll introduce him probably in a minute, and also from Simon Evans of Intrepid. We will then be following that with a Q&A. So do send in your questions in the meanwhile in the chat box, and I'll be making a note of them. But we'll also have somebody from Intrepid, Matt Eady, will be in the chat box as well. So he may well be able to answer your questions as we go along as well. And we've also got Jess from Wanderlust in the chat box as well. So do feel free to ask any questions in there or make any comments during the evening. So just to, and before anybody asks, we always get asked, yes, we will be recording the evening. We'll send that link out in a few days. So if you need to see it again, or if you need to leave before the end, if you've missed the beginning, don't worry, because we will be sending it out again. So just to give you a bit of an insight into our great speakers tonight. First of all, Mark Stratton. Welcome, Mark.
Hello.
And hey, Mark writes and records radio about travel and the environment, and he was awarded Travel Writer of the Year in the Travel Media Awards just a couple of weeks ago. And during a globe-trotting career, Mark's been fortunate enough to make 4 separate voyages to Antarctica already, and indeed is due to go again soon. And Mark's contributing editor to Wanderlust. You'll have seen his recent article on South Georgia. That was in our August-September issue. And also his article last year on Antarctica itself. And so those of you who are regular readers and subscribers, do look those back up. Or, of course, they're on the Wanderlust website. And then we're also joined tonight by Simon Evans. Simon has travelled extensively on all 7 continents, but his standout trips have been the ones to Antarctica, the Falkland Islands and South Georgia, which gave him the polar bug. And so he shares this enthusiasm as polar team leader for Intrepid, working tirelessly, he says. I'm sure it is tirelessly. Yeah. To spread the word about the breathtaking beauty of this untouched natural environment. So yes, it's a really special part of the world, and I've been lucky enough to have been to Antarctica and South Georgia myself quite a while ago. But so looking forward to this, because I think it really is the ultimate trip for so many people. So yeah, absolutely amazing. Oh, and Deborah in the chat box, Marks has said, fab article on South Georgia, by the way, made me want to visit next year.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it really was good. So we're going to hear lots tonight. I know we're going to give you really itchy feet. So first of all, before we have our first speaker, let's just have a short video to get us in the mood. Antarctica. So Mark, we're going to hand over to you now, and please take it away.
Right, well, welcome everybody to this webinar, and I must protest that I've been allowed about 15 minutes to actually to make this talk, because this really is a trip of a lifetime, and you can say an awful lot more about it than in 15 minutes worth. As Lynn said, I've made 4 trips. My name is Mark Stratton. I'm a travel writer, photographer, a radio broadcaster, and what I'm going to concentrate on tonight is a probably the most standard basic entry trip, which is the 10, 11, 12-day trip into the Antarctic Peninsula. On the slide there, you can see the ship which Intrepid are chartering for this season, the Ocean Endeavour, which is a lovely trip. A lovely ship, I should say. So Antarctic Peninsula, this is the northernmost peninsula and definitely the most accessible part of Antarctica. And it probably accounts for over 95% of all Antarctic journeys. It's a really fascinating mixture of mainland Antarctica, plus lots of craggy islands. There's loads of icebergs, there's lots of glaciers, and there's fantastic wildlife. And typically you will spend most of your time on the Bellingshausen Sea. That's to the west of the peninsula. On the other side is the Weddell Sea, which has prodigious quantities of ice. And that's where Shackleton got stuck and where Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, sank. But we're going to concentrate mostly on this talk on the Bellingshausen Sea side. That's the western side of the peninsula. So, well, here's your first challenge, okay? If you're at all prone to seasickness, you definitely need to medicate going into the Drake's Passage. This is where you start from. You start from Latin America. It might be Punta Arenas in Chile, or it might be Ushuaia in Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. And it's a 2-day crossing down to the Antarctic Peninsula. So it really is the closest point to continental land. You can get a Drake's Lake. Back in March, I had an incredibly flat 2-day crossing, and it was so calm, and I was outside all the time, wildlife spotting. Or you can get some pretty big seas as you head into the Southern Ocean. Inevitably, though, whichever style of ocean it is, you're going to have albatrosses following you. This is a black-back albatross. These are just phenomenal birds to watch, the great wanderers of the ocean. And they will be following you almost from the start of your voyage. And it's fantastic watching them just glide across the thermals. And, well, let's say Antarctica really starts to become a little bit real when you start to see icebergs. Now, I took this shot probably halfway along the voyage, and we saw these two colossal pieces of ice back in 2014, my first trip down to Antarctica. And the piece at the back is what's called a tabular iceberg. And the geologists on board, you have specialist guest lecturers on board who do really fascinating lectures about the region, the wildlife, ecology, geology, told me that was probably 2 to 3 kilometers long, that piece at the back, the tabular iceberg. And the face was probably 100 meters high. So it's a huge piece of ice, probably which drifted out from the Larsen ice shelf, which is definitely breaking up in parts down on the peninsula. They're just they're like ghostly ships, and they're just incredible whenever you see them. It draws everybody out on deck to photograph them. And so here's the scene. On that first, I took this in 2014. On that first voyage, we had quite a rough crossing, and the captain decided let's calm things down a bit. Let's anchor, and we'll have a nice dinner for those people who managed to make it out of their cabins, and we'll have a nice calm evening. It was a beautiful evening. And then all around us, all of a sudden, were humpback whales. They were feeding in the brash ice, and the brash ice, the little floaty bits of ice you can see in this slide here. And they feed on krill. They're the great showy whale of the world, and you'll see plenty of those down in Antarctica. And the blow coming out of their 2 blowholes was being caught in the evening sunlight, and it was quite magnificent. And then, well, wake up in paradise. I kind of would describe when you first see Antarctica at first light as actually, it's kind of like you being a child on seeing your first white Christmas. It's a sense of wonderment. And this place is called Paradise Bay. And we started here. This was the first place on one of the trips I've made down there. And you can see the chunks of ice are called bergy bits. They're blue tinged. And so they will be glacial or freshwater ice as opposed to sea ice, which is completely different. And you can see the snowy the snowy uplands in the background, and these bergy bits are wedged in this rocky bay. So it's a very primeval and wonderfully photogenic landscape. But of course, you really know you've arrived when you see these. This is obviously a penguin, and this is a gentoo penguin. If you need to take a long lens of you, because you will see these. They're one of the first sights you'll see as you approach Antarctica and once you get in the waters. This is porpoising. That's how they travel. They come flying out of the water, dive back in, and fly back out again. It's very likely this has been on a very long-range fishing trip. It could be male or it could be female. Both parents take care of raising their chicks. The gentoos are a pugnacious penguin. I love them. They fight off anybody who attempts to grab their chicks. It really is the iconic and entertaining sight of Antarctica, and I promise you it will entertain you for the entire period you're down there, because they're such wonderful creatures. So you're in your cozy ship. It's nice and warm, and your first Zodiac ride. This is a Zodiac inflatable. Typically, you'll do 2 excursions a day, but that's very weather dependent. If the weather's bad and hard and there's a big swell, you might not go out. You might do a ship cruise, but typically you'll go out on these Zodiacs. And as you can see there, you look outside and you think, wow, I better put on a few extra layers. You do really need to get rugged up against the cold. It can be freezing. I've had really, really low temperatures down there. Likewise, when I was there in March, I had a 20 degrees centigrade temperature, which was one of the highest ever recorded in Antarctica, and that was very much shirt sleeves weather, which is really unusual. But hopefully this is the type of scenario you'll encounter. Lots of brash ice here, and working your way through that. And if on the Zodiac, you can either go on land or you can do a mini cruise. Mini cruises are fantastic. The Antarctica is such a dynamic environment. There is always so much going on. Life and death struggles, and animals absolutely everywhere. And this is a fairly typical scene. So the boat here was cruising, the Zodiac here was cruising around a piece of ice floe, and there's these crab eater seals laid up on the ice. A slight misnomer in the fact that they do actually eat krill, although they are small crustaceans, krill. And but it's a very, very common sight to see them, and you'll see a number of different seal species on your journey. Well, here's one extraordinary seal species, and really one of the most favored sightings down in Antarctica. This is the second most feared predator of Antarctica. This is, of course, a leopard seal. They can get 12 to 14 feet long. They have ferocious teeth. And I'm afraid to say, penguin lovers, they shred penguins, quite a lot of them, 8 to 10 a day, and they've got a very heavy appetite. And they do it rather brutally, splattering the poor penguin. So blood and guts going everywhere. Again, a very visceral environment, but they're amazing swimmers, fantastic to watch, and you just would not want to get into the water with them. I say the second most feared predator of the peninsula, obviously orca are the number one, although I have never seen either of the ecotypes of orca down in Antarctica yet. So that's a long-held ambition for me. And it's not all brute force and blubber. You can see here a beautiful, dainty little bird called Wilson's storm petrel that I photographed a few years ago. The bird life down in Antarctica, where we can say that the diversity is not high, but the abundance is sensational. You see huge numbers of the main birds down there, which is skuas and giant petrels and albatross. And these Wilson storm petrels, a dainty little bird which dances on the water. And you quite easily find them after a leopard seal has shredded a penguin. You have this oily film of blood and guts on the water, and they're hoovering up the bits. Otherwise, this little bronze bird is a beautiful creature. And when you're not actually out and about on a Zodiac, you just go out on deck and take in the magnificent scenery. And this is a staple for Antarctica. This is called the Le Maire Channel. It's got huge, steep walls. It gets very narrow in places. Last March, when I was going through, there was an enormous avalanche came down just behind the boat, and the spray of the snow landed on the back deck. It's a very, very scenic place and a great place to spot whales as well. So it's one of the most scenic highlights of a trip down to Antarctica. And so when you land, here's a typical landing spot. Typically, your crew will put out red flags just to keep you away from sensitive breeding areas, or perhaps a penguin crash, because sometimes the penguins all crash together, particularly the emperor penguin, although you won't see any on this side of the peninsula. And you get a chance to walk around, hike in the snow. You can see here, it's looking a little Spartan on the edge here, and there's quite a lot of discoloration of the snow, and that's lichen. And lichen is an increasing sight down in Antarctica these days as temperatures start to warm up. But of course, what we're really going there on the ice for, and these are the star turn, again, are the penguins. You know, I never get tired of these creatures. On the left-hand side, on my left-hand side, with the yellow crop, or the golden crop really, is the king penguin, an absolutely beautiful species, quite tall, just under 1 meter tall. They're not the bravest penguin, but they're very curious. And you're more likely to see those north of the Antarctic Peninsula, and you'll often have a stop perhaps on the way back in the South Shetland Isles or somewhere like that, and there's a good chance you'll see them there. And certainly you see them in the sub-Antarctic islands, South Georgia. They are in massive numbers in South Georgia, and they're beautiful. And the other one to the right is the chinstrap penguin. I really like this. You can see why it's called chinstrap penguin. It's got this small line beneath its crop and its beak. And what I did here was, sometimes you get out onto these sites, you get 2 or 3 hours on land, and people rush around just trying to photograph absolutely everything. And what I did here was I just sat for 45 minutes for an hour with my long lens. I saw that the penguins were splashing out onto the rocks here, and I just sat there and watched them, and I managed to get a few really nice shots of them coming out of the water. So actually you're so excited when you get there. You just want to do everything. But actually, it's quite nice to just focus and just watch what happens and try to learn a bit about the behavior of each of these creatures. Well, I mean, yeah, be prepared for surprises. So this was last March. It's in an amazing natural harbour called Neko Harbour, and we had a really nice hike planned. We hiked in fresh, deep snow up to our knees to the top of a mountain summit, and we looked down over the bay. And whilst I was there was a huge glacier. It carved, the front of it carved. There's this enormous roar all around the bay, and that was great. And I was watching some Gentoo penguins defend their chicks against the very predatory skuas. And when I saw the humpbacks enter the bay and were lunge feeding, as this one is doing here, and I ran down through the snow, and it was like running down a sand dune, and jumped into a Zodiac back to the ship and managed to get really close. And one popped out of the water here. Sometimes you see them breaching, you see them spy hopping where they come out and have a good look. But this one was actually lunge feeding, and they're a really spectacular whale. So it's an environment where something can happen anytime. It's just incredible. And well, don't forget us. How can you possibly forget a 3 to 4 ton creature as quite as, well, let's face it, as ugly as this? This is the male elephant seals. You'll see them a little bit further north of the peninsula, and certainly again on South Georgia. And there's some brilliant haul outs for these males in the Falklands. They typically haul out when they're tired after breeding seasons, because they have to guard enormous harems of females, and they fight each other. But when they're on the ground basking together, they're pretty bad mannered, belly charging each other, passing wind, burping, and they're just great animals to watch. And don't forget the history. There's a really fascinating history. Invariably on tour, you will get to perhaps visit a scientific base, like, for instance, Almirante Brown, which is an Argentinian research center, which is infamous for being burnt to the ground by a doctor who didn't didn't want to overwinter, and so they had to come back and pick him up. And I think he was duly arrested and jailed for that rather bad crime. And typically you'll go to Antarctic Base A, almost certainly Port Lockroy, which is the world's southernmost post office, where you can send postcards all around the world, and it's staffed by 4 volunteers who've just been announced recently. 4 women will be there for this coming season, which is sort of late October to early March. So you will definitely get a chance to post it, and the souvenir is incredibly expensive, but it's kind of fun. And well, look, you're on board. Life on board is pretty comfortable. Most ships will have they may have a spa, a jacuzzi, a sauna, and food-wise, the cuisine, these are expensive trips, and the cuisine generally reflects that. This is part of a 3-course evening meal, and typically at lunchtime you'll have a buffet and breakfast buffet as well. So you're pretty well fed throughout. There's usually a gym as well, and my mantra is skip lunch and go to the gym, or I'll end up looking like a walrus. And well, there is one final rites of passage ritual that's 2 Scottish friends of mine jumping off the pontoon for the polar plunge. Lynn said she didn't quite fancy doing it, but you haven't lived, Lynn, until you've tried this. Most people usually survive it. So the water's about 1 to 1.5 degrees centigrade in temperature. It's just a bit of fun, really. It's extremely cold. I've done it both in the Antarctic and Arctic, so I am bipolar by definition. And you come out, you wrap yourself up in a warm towel or dressing gown, have a shot of something strong, and you have a really great vibe about having done it. So again, it's just one of these old traditions. And well, look, Antarctica, amazing. And if you want to see more, I don't know what tops amazing, but South Georgia does. I was there back in March. For me, it's the greatest wildlife island on Earth. It's obviously where Shackleton finally turned up after his disastrous expedition, 1914 to 1916, and managed to get rescued to go and help all the men to survive. Nowadays, it's absolutely taken over by wildlife, whether it's fur seals, elephant seals, or massive colonies of penguins numbering 500,000. In this case, Salisbury Plain king penguins. It's sensational, and it's really, if you've done Antarctic Peninsula and you want to go again, I think you need to be looking at saving really hard and adding South Georgia. And of course, you might want to do all 3 of them. So Antarctica, South Georgia, and the Falklands. The Falklands is absolutely brilliant for birds. I love it. You island hop, you get a huge diversity of bird life. And here are 2 northern rockhopper penguins, very fluffy and slightly bulked out, bracing themselves against a very, very cold, wet day that I experienced back there in March. And well, there we go, a nice iceberg to end. Fantastical shapes, fantastical colors and textures, and that's what Antarctica is. It's completely unpredictable. It's completely exciting, and for those who've been, I hope you get a chance to go again and explore more regions. For those of you who haven't been, save hard and do try to make it one day, because it will completely change your world. Thank you so much for listening.
Oh, Mark, what brilliant photos. I mean, they were just magical. And of course, obviously, just hearing all of that as well, just absolutely amazing. I know everybody would have really enjoyed that. I love that you included the rockhopper penguins, because they are so cute. Those eyebrows always remind me of anybody remembers who Dennis Healy was.
Yeah, and you have that. Yeah, I mean, they have the macaronis have great eyebrows, but they're not quite as squat and comical. I once sat around in the Falklands. I was looking for orca. I was trying to spot some orca, and they were just all around me, and they were literally taking the sandwiches out of my lunchbox. So they're cheeky, and then they throw themselves off cliffs. They choose not to go down nice sandy beaches and ease themselves. They just chuck themselves off cliffs into the water, and it all looks very dangerous. But they're great fun. That's why the Falklands is a particularly fab place to go, because you'll see these critters. So.
That's right. And I think that's one of the things that strikes you when you're there, just that you don't appreciate beforehand, perhaps, about how different all the penguins are in looks and personality and the way they move, everything.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the tall, elegant king penguin. I watched the king penguins on South Georgia back in March. I watched giant petrels snatching their chicks, and you'd see a gentoo come running in, and the gentoos are half the size of the king penguins. The king penguins don't seem to fight back, and the gentoos come running in. Not even their own penguin species. They come running in to try and see the giant petrels off. They just don't like giant petrels, which are a menacing bird, but you see these battles all the time, and sometimes they don't end well, sometimes they do end well. So it's you have to steel yourself for these moments. So it's part of life. It's visceral and it's fantastic.
Yeah, always a gripping drama going on. Obviously, you didn't get a chance to talk much about the famous explorers. You mentioned Shackleton very briefly, for instance, but when you've been, have you been aware of that kind of legacy, that history of the Scotts and the Shackletons and so on?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, a lot of those expeditions went in from a different part of the continent, and so they were heading in, like for instance, McMurdo Sound over in the Ross Sea area. So certainly Shackleton is one that does loom very large. There's great literature. A lot of these channels are named after some of the great explorers. For instance, I read a book while I was down there in March about the de Galache, the Belgica expedition, 1898 to 1900. An extraordinary tale of survival, every bit as entertaining and crazy as Shackleton's. And a lot of the names of the geography are named after people from that expedition, and some that didn't survive. It wasn't as successful as Shackleton's in terms of getting everybody out. So you do pick it up, certainly from that side. Scott mainly operated on a different side of the continent, but Shackleton is very, very real, and particularly when if you travel out to Elephant Island. I had the privilege of actually seeing Elephant Island, where his men spent 4.5 months under an upturned boat. It's extraordinary. It's so brutal. You go outside and you shiver some days, and you think, my God, how did they spend 4.5 months under a boat? That presence is definitely there. Yeah, definitely. You definitely feel it. And hopefully on board, you'll have a really good historian who will illuminate the history of exploration of that region.
No, absolutely. It really does add to the experience, doesn't it? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, Mark, and we'll have you back in a short while for the Q&A.
Okay.
And that was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to hear from Simon Evans. Hi, Simon, of Intrepid Travel. And
yes,
so I'm sure now we're going to get a bit more detail, perhaps, and into the ins and outs. So I'll leave you to it.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Welcome, everybody. Good evening to you. Firstly, just to introduce myself. So my name is Simon Evans. I'm the Polar Sales Manager for the Ocean Endeavour at Intrepid Travel. I've been very lucky to travel down to Antarctica, across to the Falklands and South Georgia. I'm also hoping to go out there in a couple of months as well. So very much looking forward to sharing some of my knowledge and experience with you guys this evening. We've got quite a lot to get through, quite a lot of slides, so excuse me if I'm speaking very quickly, but I'm just trying to give you as much information as possible in the time that we've got. So to start with, Mark briefly touched on this, but all of the voyages will depart from Latin America. So our first voyage of the season, which actually departs in about 3 weeks' time, will leave from Punta Arenas, which is on the Chilean side. So you fly into Santiago and then from there down to Punta Arenas on a short domestic flight. And then after that, all of our voyages will start from the southernmost point of Argentina, which is Ushuaia. So for there, you would fly into Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, and then it's about 3.5-hour flight down to Ushuaia. Now, people often ask, what's the best time to go to Antarctica? And there's not really a best or a worst time to go. Just throughout the course of the season, there's different highlights to see. So I'm just going to chat you through those briefly now. So early on in the season, so the spring and early summertime. So this is kind of November through to mid-December time. This is probably Antarctica at its most beautiful. All of the ice and the icebergs are very white and pristine. So in terms of the scenery, this is probably the best time to head down there. The days are not quite sort of full daylight at this point, so you will still get some really nice sunrises and sunsets. There's plenty of wildlife around, lots and lots of penguins, hopefully a few seals. It's a little bit early on for the whales, but you might see a few if you're lucky. But yeah, as I said, just a really, really beautiful time to visit. Then as we move into the midsummer, so this is the sort of main high season period. This is kind of sort of Christmas time through to the end of January. Generally, the prices are a bit more expensive this time of year, but there is a reason for that. So this is the height of the Antarctic summer. Generally, the temperatures should be a bit warmer. Obviously, with the current climate trends, that's not always the case, but as a general rule of thumb, that should be the case. At this point, hopefully, you will have sort of longer daylight hours, so near enough 24-hour daylight, which means more opportunities and more daylight hours for exploring. There'll be lots and lots of activity going on. The penguin chicks will hatch around Christmas time or just before then. So these are obviously a big draw for a lot of people. So there'll be lots of activity on the penguin colonies, plenty of seals around. The whales will start to come down in slightly bigger numbers. Later on in the season is going to be better for the whales, but hopefully if you're lucky, you will see a few. And yeah, as I said, just a fantastic time to see Antarctica in all its glory during these months. And then as we move on to the end of the season, so the late summertime, so this is kind of February going through to the end of March, towards the end of the season. Again, the days start to get a bit shorter as we come out of the main Antarctic summer. It does mean you get some absolutely amazing sunsets at this time of year. But the main highlight for this period is the whales that come down in serious numbers. So sort of February time, they'll have come down in masses at that point. They'll have done lots and lots of feeding. By the end of the season, they'll have really bulked up and they'll be very playful. So you should have some really, really good opportunities to get some great whale sightings. So yeah, fantastic time of year for that. Also at this time of the year, the ice tends to recede a little bit. So it's generally quite a good time to get a bit further south as well. Some of the itineraries that you can do aims across the Antarctic Circle. And generally later on in the season, these are when these itineraries are offered. So that's just a brief overview of the different seasons in Antarctica. Mark very much touched on what you're likely to see down there, so I won't spend too much time on this. But in the Antarctic Peninsula, there's generally 3 species of penguin that you're likely to see. And then if you have the time and budget to do one of the longer trips, taking in the Falklands and South Georgia, then you have the chance to see up to 7 different penguin varieties. Also plenty of seals, as Mark touched upon. Throughout the course of the season, you should have good chances of seeing lots and lots of seals. And if you're keen on seeing the big elephant seals jousting, then South Georgia is definitely the place for that. Plenty of whales as well. The sort of main species that you're likely to see in and around the peninsula, the humpbacks, the minkies, and if you're lucky, the orcas as well. Over recent years, there have been blue whales spotted as well in and around the peninsula and South Georgia. So yeah, lots and lots of different whale species that you're hopefully likely to see, particularly later on in the season. Also, lots and lots of bird life. When you're doing the crossings, the days at sea, you'll have lots and lots of birds following the ship, where the weight kind of kicks up lots of nutrients and food for the birds. And once you get down into the peninsula, the Falklands and South Georgia, there's a huge variety of different birds to see as well. We've put this slide in just in case you watch the presentation back, just so you can have a better idea of the different wildlife you can see in the different spots in the different areas that you're likely to visit. And then finally, obviously, aside from the wildlife, it's just the amazing scenery. I've been lucky enough to travel to places all around the world, and Antarctica for me still is the bucket list place, just in terms of beauty, just the fact you're so remote from anywhere, just these absolutely beautiful ice sculptures, icebergs, set against this beautiful backdrop of the Antarctic mountains. It really, really is somewhere very, very special. And yeah, I'm sure anyone that's been down there can agree with me on that. And there's also a huge amount of history. As Mark touched on, you've got all of the Antarctic explorer history. So you have Shackleton's grave is in South Georgia. And there's obviously all of the other explorers like Scott and Amundsen, and the historians on board will very much bring those explorers' lives to light and talk you through what they went through. There's also lots of history from the whaling industry. So there's remnants of past whaling stations, which hopefully you'll get to see on some of the landing sites as well. So lots and lots of really interesting factual stuff to learn about, and obviously just beautiful scenery to accompany that as well. So if you're visiting Antarctica as a tourist, then the only way that you can do that is on board a tourist ship. So tonight we're going to be focusing on our ship, which is the Ocean Endeavour. So just a few key points to note on why this is such a good ship to choose. So we have a leading guest to expedition team ratio of 8:1. We have enough zodiacs on board to have everybody off the ship at the same time. And basically with those two factors, it allows us to have very fast operations, which means more time for landings and zodiac cruising. So our whole philosophy is to try and get you off the ship and spend as much time off the ship as possible, and get up close to Antarctica and the wildlife and experience it as best as possible. We also have a huge amount of deck space on board. So when you're not off the ship doing the landings and the excursions, the ship itself is a fantastic viewing spot. When I was down there, we were lucky enough to have some whales literally just circling around the ship, and seeing them from above was a really, really special experience. Also, some of the scenery, to see it from the ship is absolutely fantastic, and obviously it gives you a different perspective than when you're on the lower zodiacs or out on the land as well. On board our ship, we have some fantastic, knowledgeable leaders. So Dr. Alex Cowan is one of our main expedition leaders. He's very well known within the industry, very highly respected, and he's assembled a fantastic team of other experts on board as well, who will be your main point of contact throughout the voyage, will help bring the whole experience to light, and allow you to learn about Antarctica and everything that it has to offer. This is one of our other leaders, Lauren, and both Lauren and Alex have been pivotal in setting up the Citizen Science Project. And now this is something that we're going to offer on all of our voyages. And basically, you as a passenger will be able to get involved in various scientific projects. It will largely be collecting data for a variety of different projects that we have, and then that data is then fed back to the whichever project we're supporting, and used as scientific research. Obviously, getting down to Antarctica is a very expensive and not so easy place to get to. And so by allowing the passengers to get involved in this data collection, it really helps with the organisations that are seeking that data and provides some really useful information for them. So we have various different projects that we support, but there might be things like the Happy Whale, which involves taking pictures of whales. There's ones where we have collection of water samples and looking at the krill and what's in the water. We have other ones where we're taking pictures of the clouds and seeing how those are, and also ones related to the bird life down there as well. So lots and lots of different projects and organisations that we're supporting, and as I said, a really good way to give back a bit as well. So the ship itself, the Ocean Endeavour. Now this is a fantastic ship. It's actually, wouldn't say, well, very much a sort of mid-range ship. The ship itself is actually capable of taking well over 400 passengers, but we cap it at a maximum of 200. This means that we can access all of the landing sites, and just means that it's a lot more comfortable on board as well for you. So on board the ship, we have 10 different cabin categories in total. If you're traveling as a solo passenger, we have 3 separate cabin categories. So an interior, a porthole and a window category. And those cabins will carry a lower single supplement than you would normally pay. For those on a sort of lower budget, we also have triple cabins. or if you're traveling as a small group of 3. And then we also have a variety of different twin cabins, which start with the interior and kind of go up to larger window ones. And generally, as you go up through the different categories, we have more space and facilities and amenities within those. So yeah, lots of different cabin categories to suit all different requirements and budgets. We also have lots of different communal areas on board. As I said, it's a pretty large ship, so there's plenty of space to spread out, lots of communal areas. So at the bow of the ship at the front, we have the open bridge. This is where the captain and his crew navigate and hopefully get you through to the peninsula very safely. And we have an open bridge policy so that you can go and have a chat with the captain and his crew, learn a bit more about what he gets up to, and see them actually in action navigating the ship. As we move back along, we have the 360-degree fly decks. So as I mentioned earlier, fantastic viewing opportunities from up here to see the wildlife and all the scenery. The Meridian Club, which is where we do the daily yoga classes each morning, up on the top deck. We also have a small gym on board. There's a spa area with health and wellness where you can get massages. We also have a couple of saunas. There's also a couple of lounges. The lounges will be the main kind of focus when it comes to the presentations and lectures, and also very much one of the the sort of main meeting spaces as well. One of the lounges has a bar in there, so yeah, very much a sort of sociable hub there. Getting towards the stern of the ship, we also have an outdoor saltwater pool. For those brave enough to weather that. There's also a small jacuzzi as well. And then we also have a shop on board as well. And I'll touch on the mudroom as well on the next couple of slides. So as I mentioned, very much a key focus is to try and spend as much time off the ship, although the ship is very comfortable and will ensure that you have a really nice stay when you're down in the peninsula or in South Georgia and the Falklands. As I said, we're very keen to get you off the ship as much as possible. So on board we have 20 of the normal zodiacs, which means that we can have everybody off at the same time. So once the ship gets into position for the landings, the zodiacs will be lowered down and we'll start the boarding process or landing process. We'll aim to try and do 2 landings each day, so 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Obviously, that's very much subject to the ice and weather conditions, but all of the crew on board will be as desperate as all the passengers to try and get off the ship. So we will aim to do that a couple of times each day. Now, at the bottom of the ship, we have a large mudroom. We have enough lockers for everybody on board. So it means that you can leave all of your wet weather gear down here rather than having to traipse it back up to your cabin each day. So everybody on the ship will be split into groups, and when it's your turn, you'll be called down to the mudroom. You'll be able to get all of your gear on, and then it's a short walk down to the loading bay where you'll board the Zodiac. So as you can see, we've got the steps that pull down, and we have these on both sides of the ship, which means that we can get everybody off and back on again very quickly. And you'll have the staff waiting for you there to help you onto the Zodiacs. So what's included in the packages that we offer? So all of the trips will include the Expedition Parker on loan, as well as the muck boots. So you'll definitely need these when you're going out on the landings. Then we also offer an inner jacket, which is yours to keep. We also have the pre-voyage hotel night and transfers. So for the first trip of the season, that'll be from Punta Arenas, and then the rest of them will be Ushuaia. And we'll pick you up from the airport, take you to the hotel, you have your evening there, and then we'll take you to the ship the following day. While on board, we have all of the lectures and presentations. So these are provided by the expedition team throughout the crossings on the sea days. There'll be a full lecture program, and then at the end of each of the daily landings, we'll have a short briefing and kind of touch on what we've seen and done that day, and then chat through the plans for the next day as well. The Citizen Science Project, which I mentioned earlier, so that's included on every voyage. All of the Zodiac cruising and shore landings, all of your meals, daily yoga classes, and all of the voyages are completely carbon offset as well. A lot of people ask about the jackets and the clothing, so these are just a picture of what we offer. So the one on the right is the outer parka, which will just be on loan for the duration of the trip, and then the inner jacket, which will be yours to keep, hopefully a lot easier to pack up as well. In addition to the regular landings and excursions that we offer, there's also optional activities. So here you can see the photography programs. This runs throughout the course of the voyage. We'll have a photography expert on board who will be leading this. There'll be a series of workshops while you're on the ship, and then there'll be dedicated landings where you go out with the group of photographers. And for those, we'll use these forward-facing zodiacs. So these mean you can get a bit further afield. A bigger boat and slightly more powerful than the regular zodiacs. They have the forward-facing seats, which just makes it a bit easier for taking pictures. So yeah, as I said, you'll go out with the photography expert, and they'll be very much focused on getting the best pictures to make the most of your experience. We also do this in partnership with Sony, so there'll be Sony equipment on board that you'll be able to test out and use throughout the course of the voyage as well. We also offer the camping. This is earlier on in the season through to kind of end of January time, just because the snow and ice conditions start to get a little bit iffy after that and not enough snow coverage. But this is a one-off activity that will be offered on each voyage. As soon as the conditions are good enough to do that, everybody that's signed up for the camping will leave the ship after dinner, spend the evening out on the ice, and then come back to the ship in morning in time for breakfast. Before picking up the itinerary and joining the rest of the group. I was lucky enough to do this when I went down there. Really special experience. To say you've spent a night out on the ice in Antarctica is a pretty cool thing to say. So if you do have the opportunity to go down there and fancy doing this, I highly recommend it. Spaces are quite limited, so if you are keen on doing that, it's definitely worth signing up for it early on. The snowshoeing, like the camping, this is kind of done on the early season voyages through to end of January time, just when there's enough snow coverage. This is booked once you're on board, and just gives you the opportunity to get a bit further afield from the guys on the regular landing, stretch your legs a little bit more, and hopefully see a bit more of Antarctica and everything that it has to offer. The kayaking, like the photography program, this is offered throughout the course of the voyage. So once you get down to the peninsula, the kayakers will try and get out most days. And we'll see it's very much dependent on the snow and ice conditions and the weather. But we'll try and get out either for a morning or an afternoon, or if the group are feeling really up for it, then maybe a full day. But yeah, this very much depends on the group and the conditions when you're down there. If you're not keen on doing or don't fancy doing the kayaking every day, we do also have the day paddle, which is just a one-off excursion in the sort of sturdy inflatable kayaks. And this just means that if you fancy giving it a try, but don't necessarily want to be doing it, all day, just want to see how it would be, then we can do this as just a one-off activity as well. The different itineraries that we offer. So essentially there's 4 different trips. As Mark touched on earlier, he'd sort of focused on the Best of Antarctica, which is the kind of classic itinerary. So this is an 11-day voyage that will just take in the Antarctic Peninsula. We have the Best of Antarctica in Depth, which is one on the right there. This is one I'm hoping to do in November. So if anyone fancies joining, feel free to get involved with that. This is the trip, as well as doing the western side of the peninsula, also spend some time on the Weddell Sea side as well, which is a bit more off the beaten track. Not so many of the itineraries visit this side, but you do have the huge tabular icebergs, and it offers something a bit different from the western side of the peninsula. So yeah, it should be a really interesting voyage. On the bottom left there, you have the journey to the Antarctic Circle. So this is very similar to the Best of Antarctic or the classic Antarctic trips, but we'll aim to get a bit further south down the peninsula and actually cross the Antarctic Circle line. So as well as having some bragging rights, it just gives you additional extra days in Antarctica to enjoy the experience and get some more landings in, and hopefully some more wildlife. And then finally, if you do have the time and the budget for it, the Antarctic, Falklands and South Georgia trips really are something special. These are 3-week itineraries, so they are fairly substantial. But as we've sort of touched on throughout the presentation, as well as having the amazing scenery and wildlife in Antarctica, to actually take in South Georgia and the Falklands as well, which for wildlife, South Georgia for me is just, absolutely incredible. Just the volume of wildlife you've got there is absolutely incredible. It's also really, really beautiful. Very different landscapes as well to what you'll see in Antarctica, and also with the Falklands as well. You've got people actually living there, and it's again slightly different to what you'll see elsewhere. So if you do have the time and budget for one of these longer trips, then I highly recommend them. So this evening, as you've joined us, we have an exclusive offer for the Ocean Endeavour. So for the forthcoming season, we've got 40% off. Now this is available on all of the cabin types except for the Category 2 and Category 3 cabins. Obviously, a lot of the trips are getting quite booked up now, so it's very much subject to the availability. But there's some absolutely amazing deals to be had there. So if you are available to travel this forthcoming season, I highly recommend having a look at some of the offers that we've got, because some absolutely fantastic bargains there to have. And then for the 23-24 season, we have 20% off the Category 5 to 7 cabins and 25% off the Category 8 to 10 cabins. So this deal is going to be in place through till the end of the month, and is exclusive for you guys joining us this evening. Now, if you do want to take advantage of these offers, then you'll need to contact our booking partners, Trailfinders. The contact numbers there. For those of you who are outside of the UK, then the dialing code 0044, and then you can take off the 0. As well as being able to book the cruise, Trailfinders will be able to put a sort of full package for you together as well. So any pre or post cruise arrangements that you would like, they will also be able to assist with that. So that's pretty much it from me. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'm going to pass you back over to Lynn now. And we look forward to seeing you in Antarctica very soon, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. So we look forward to hearing and seeing some of these.
Hey, thanks, Simon. That was so interesting. Gosh, you covered so much ground there.
It's a bit of a whistle stop.
But then there is so much to talk about, isn't there? And so many practical things. We've got lots of questions, but I just want to reiterate again that you talked about South Georgia, and I do think I agree. If somebody can spare the time, that extra time and money, I do think South Georgia is so special. You're never going to regret going there. It really is like walking into a wildlife documentary, isn't it? It's incredible.
Very much so. Yeah, it's a very special place.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Right. I'm going to, I think we'll get going on some questions. So first of all, with you, Simon. So age has come up quite a bit. What's the minimum age? Is there an upper age? Is there a certain fitness level needed? And one viewer said that her mother's was 80 years young, and will she be able to participate in the activities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the minimum age is 8 years old. So as long as clients are above that, then they're welcome to join. And then in terms of upper age limit, we don't really have one. It's all really down to sort of physical fitness and ability. So as long as people are able to get down the steps and onto the Zodiacs and back off again, then they're good to join, really. Obviously, some of the landing sites, the footing can be a bit treacherous, particularly if it's deep snow or it's pebbly or rocky. But we'll have the expedition team to help all passengers on and off the Zodiacs. Pretty much as long as you can get on and off the Zodiac, then you're good, you're good to join. Obviously, if people don't want to go out on every landing, they don't have to. They're welcome to stay on the ship. But obviously, getting down to Antarctica, you really want to try and get off there, as much as possible to experience it firsthand. So, So as long as people are in good or relatively good physical shape, then you should be good to go.
And somebody did ask, how easy is it to get in and out? And I know that's a very difficult question to answer, isn't it? I know what somebody's like. But I guess part of the thing is that the team do help. people get
Absolutely,
hit?
yeah. So yeah, I mean, as I said, at the bottom of the steps, you'll have a couple of the guys there helping to get you onto the Zodiacs, and then when you get to shore, there'll be other expedition team members there waiting for you as well. So generally, as long as you can kind of lift your legs up and scoop them across the top of the Zodiac, then you're pretty much good, really.
Okay, great. Now, Mark, we've had a few people comment on photos and also ask about taking photos. I mean, I know we could talk all night about photo tips, but what would be your basic tips, and do people need special gear?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure you need to have a long lens, ideally with a capacity of 400 mil. I think it's pretty essential. You can pull off some amazing shots and really bring them so much closer with a longer lens. So I think also, and for me, particularly when you're going out on the Zodiac, is a waterproof bag for your kit, because you never know when a wave is going to slip over the bow and soak your kit. So it's really, really important to make sure everything is thoroughly waterproof when you go into the Zodiac, because you can never tell. Even on a calm day, sometimes you can just hit the base of a small piece of swell and it'll send a wave splashing into your kit. So that's very, very important. I think also for me, attend the very first lectures of the photo guide, the photo lecturer who will be on board. I mean, learning how to adjust your white balance, for instance, in terms of the light you get when you're in the Antarctica, because you can horribly over or underexpose photographs. So they'll give you a really good photographic guide, will give you all those basic tips, and it does make a huge difference whether, if you've got an overcast day, you need to be able to deal with it. Likewise, if you have a brilliant blue sky day and the light's pinging off the glaciers or the bergy bits floating in the water, it can be dazzling, and you can come away, you can look at your photographs in the evening and think, oh gosh, it's just complete whiteout. I'm seeing white noise here. So really, really, that's a really, really helpful point. But yeah, 400 mil lens, definitely, really, really important. I'd say a minimum 400 lens if you can. So, and waterproof your gear, I think. Yeah, that's really important. I have seen some accidents where people's cameras have been splashed. And it's not the best combination.
No, it wouldn't be. Oh God, no, really good advice, that. Really good advice. And Simon, obviously, I think that was interesting about the Zodiac, the special Zodiac with photographers and the arrangement you've got with Sony. Sounded incredible. So somebody asked, is that an extra package that they would have to pay to do that? And indeed, that ties in with another question somebody asked about which those activities that you mentioned, the extras, would they have to pay for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the core kind of cruise package price will include the sort of core things that are included. So the regular landings and excursions, but for those optional activities, all of those have an additional cost. For the kayaking, the photography and the camping, those all need to be booked in advance, and we only have limited spaces for those. For the snowshoeing and the day paddle program, or the day paddle excursion, those are booked once on board. We don't need to pre-book those ones. Was there another point to that question at the beginning?
No, that was it really. No,
okay.
that was great. Which activities are included and which aren't. We did have one or two people asking again just about how many passengers are on the Endeavour, and also what are restrictions on number of people going on land.
Yeah, so Mark will probably be able to chat through this as well. I haven't experienced it firsthand, but we cap it at 200 passengers. So there's a maximum of 200. There is a regulation in Antarctica and South Georgia where you're only allowed to have 100 people on the land at any one time. So where that's the case, we will generally try and combine the landings with Zodiac cruising, so that people are still off the ship for the kind of full duration of the excursion. So whilst 100 people are on the land, the other passengers will be zodiac cruising. It might be that some people are out kayaking as well, and then they'll have a good amount of time on there, and then at halfway point we'll kind of switch things around, and so those that are zodiac cruising will get a chance to go onto the land, and those on land do the zodiac cruising. So it's all managed very well. It still means you get the best of both worlds, doing a bit of zodiac cruising and some time on land. And just means that everybody gets to see and experience everything for a decent amount of time as well.
Okay, cool. Mark, do you take binoculars, and do people really need binoculars?
Look, because I'm photographing for work, to provide photographs for the articles I'm writing. I tend to just stick with the camera because I find it's too much equipment. But a lot of people, I would say 75% of everybody who goes on these cruises will have a pair of binoculars with them. I think it's great. It's great to have them on deck when you're spotting wildlife, when you're in open ocean, for instance, you'll see perhaps a whale blow in the distance. It's great to be able to try and pin down what type of whale that might be, judging it by its blow, and certainly bird is. So I think binoculars are a really fantastic idea, actually. Just depends where your priorities lie. I think it's definitely. I think you need to strike a balance. I think you can. I mean, I feel I have to take a lot of photographs because of work, but I feel also it's quite nice to be able to just observe and take everything in rather than just continually worrying about shooting pictures. So it's a really nice, and binoculars are a great way to actually really see these creatures close up. I remember back in South Georgia in March, there's a beautiful little bird called the South Georgia pipit. And it's a fantastic little golden creature. And you think, what on earth is this little tiny songbird doing in such a rugged, harsh environment? And just actually watching them hopping around the shoreline in the intertidal zone and with binoculars was just magical. Seeing them really, really close up, rather than trying to catch them with a photograph, because they're really hard to photograph because they're so tiny and they're continually in the move. So binoculars is a great idea, I think. Yeah, unless your absolute priority is to nail down lots and lots and lots of photographs. I think, definitely taking.
In fact, just on the camera again, Andrew Parker said an affordable camera option is a good bridge camera. No interchangeable lenses, massive zoom capacity. I don't know if you've got any experience with bridge cameras, but
no.
If you think that's a good tip.
Anyway. Yeah. I mean, and if you can cut down on the weight, certainly, if you can cut down on the weight, hauling a great big heavy camera around, which I do, it's a really nice thing. So yeah,
no, absolutely. Right, Simon, few for you. What are the medical facilities if things go wrong? I mean, we know they don't, but yeah.
Yes, all the voyages will have a fully qualified doctor on board who's available 24/7. They have a small sort of doctor's room. They'll be on hand for any medical needs. Yeah.
And somebody queried about the polar plunge, about how safe that is, because, I think it was somebody, I haven't got the question in front of me now, but it was somebody who's into wild swimming and you normally go in, take it very gentle, etc. So is it really safe to just jump in like that?
Literally. I've done it in both in the Antarctic Peninsula and South Georgia. Having done it once, I'm not sure it's something I really want to do again.
I think when you do it, I mean, there's a handful of people doing it, and you do get a really nice buzz. The first time I did it, there was a great sense of camaraderie amongst the people who'd actually done it, and it was fun. It was fun, and we had a waiter with a tray of vodkas. I think it was a Russian waiter waiting for his tray of vodkas as we came out, and you just slung one down and moved on in a sort of process line. But it's fun. It's something. I don't think you need to do it more than once, personally. But then you do get people. You do get people who actually just get out and go back round and have another crack. So, but I think obviously if you have any particular heart issues, you might want to consult the doctor first before. But it's a brutal shock, and I remember doing it once, and my legs and arms just immediately went numb, and they said, "Oh, you want to get out. You really want to get out fast, actually. So you don't want to go for a wild swim." So.
Exactly. Sorry, no, I just think why?
You've got to do it next time, Lynn. You really need
no,
to.
No way. No, the tray of vodka's caught my attention when you mentioned that. I don't think you're going to convince me to do a bowl of lunch. Oh gosh. Right, moving on to seasickness, and obviously, we hear so much about the feared Drake Passage. So, not surprisingly, we had a couple of questions about seasickness. How bad is it, and about effective medication. So, do things like those bands work? Do the patches work? I don't know if either of you have comments on that.
I'm quite lucky. I don't really experience it, but I carry with me Dramamine tablet. I did use the once I went to write for Wanderlust about Pitcairn Islands, and I had those patches, and we were in a monstrous Pacific swell the whole way to the Pitcairn Islands, and the patch seemed to work as well. So the thing is to not set off without any protection whatsoever. If you think you're going to be seasick, and then at the start of the swell you think, I'll take it now, it's too late. Invariably, you need to plan. And I think anybody who fears seasickness, and what it might do is to, when you're in Ushuaia or Punta Arenas, well, it doesn't have to be that sheltered, but you could be in the Beagle Channel. Just get it before you go to open water. Take it, because it can be really quite. It's a pretty horrible experience, I would imagine. So just be prepared for it. So, but I think those patches work. I don't know. Have you ever taken a patch, Simon?
No, I mean, when I've been, again, like you, I don't get too badly affected. So I've just taken the tablets, and I seem to have been fine with those. But I think the thing is, there's no really real black and white rule. I think it seems to affect different people in different ways. But there are lots of different, you've got the patches behind the ear, there's the bands, there's the tablets. So there's lots of different things out there. So if it's something you're really concerned about, maybe either have a chat with your doctor, or have a chat with the pharmacist before you go, or once you get down to Ushuaia or Punta Arenas. But there seems to be lots of different forms of medication you can take for it. So it's just sort of finding the one that's best suited for you, I guess.
I think for me the biggest, when you're in a really big swell, and I was in a pretty big swell crossing the Scotia Sea from Elephant Island up to South Georgia back in March, it was pretty heavy. Actually, and the biggest hazard there was getting slammed around. I actually fractured my knuckle getting slammed against the side of a wall during a really big hit. So I mean, so that focused my mind. I wasn't feeling seasick. I was just thinking, my knuckles really hurt. But see, that was Jarvis careless. So it was one of those things. But the seas can be heavy, but most definitely you need to protect yourself. Medication wise, because it's a nasty condition, so it's not a very pleasant sensation. So, but I think, I've met people on these trips who are really not good in great seas, but they've taken their medication and they've been absolutely fine and turning up for every meal. So they really do work, the medication. So
it's certainly something to be aware of, and I guess think about preventing it. Okay, a few quick short ones because I'm very conscious of the time. Simon, is drinking water included?
Yeah. So water, tea, coffee available 24/7. It's just sort of soft drinks and alcoholic drinks that you need to purchase as an additional cost.
Brilliant. Can you still be allowed to do the kayaking if you're a non-swimmer?
Good question.
Yeah, it's probably not recommended. You're in a pretty extreme part of the world, and if something was to happen, then a sort of bare requirement would really be able to swim. So I wouldn't really recommend that. With the kayaking, we do recommend some previous experience. So anyone that's keen to do that, then they would need to have done a bit of kayaking previously. We have a safety boat there that will be kind of on hand for any issues that do arise, should that happen whilst kayaking. But if you're unable to swim, maybe it's not the best idea.
With the experience, I think this is such a unique experience. It sounds like somebody should try and get a little bit of practice in anyway before they go.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a few questions about solo supplements. So can you just run us through again? So basically, what percentage of people would you say approximately are going solo? You do get solo people on it.
Yeah, we get a lot of solo passengers. So it's probably around sort of, I'd say at least 40% of some of the voyages. So it's quite a significant number. So yeah, we have there's effectively 3 cabin categories are designated for solo passengers. So there's an interior one, a porthole one, and a window cabin. So yeah, if you're traveling solo, then and you want your cabin to yourself, then those are going to be the best for you. If you're not fussed about sharing with somebody else, then you can also share with somebody else of the same sex, and then that means you don't pay any single supplement at all. So if you're happy to do that, then that's the sort of best value option for that. But yeah, the solo cabins, although they are a bit more, they're not, it's not a huge supplement you might find on some of the other ships.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I think I've got time probably for another question each. Mark, somebody was asking about Shackleton and when to go, but I think the more important thing really is where to go with Shackleton, isn't it? So
I'm
going to touch on that again.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I went to Grytviken, which is where Shackleton's buried, he died in 1920. He had a heart attack. That was obviously he survived the disastrous. 1922 he died. His tomb is in Grytviken, and I wrote about this in the article earlier this year for Wanderlust. And it's really the most powerful place I think I've ever experienced in travel. There's this tremendous awe, this legendary character of Antarctic exploration being buried there, and the cemetery is a really, it's almost felt like a pilgrimage. So that was an incredible experience, and that's one of the reasons why South Georgia is it's very, very atmospheric. You get these dark clouds and these low sea mists, and that was an incredible experience. And you go there and you have a toast for Shackleton. Shackleton had a bit of a taste for whiskey, let's put it like that. And you go there and you have a toast. You have a toast for Shackleton at his gravesite. If you're lucky enough, you won't follow exactly the route. When he set off in the James Caird, the small lifeboat, when he set off in the James Caird with 5 other mariners to reach South Georgia, you'll go in a slightly different route. You're going a more direct diagonal route from Elephant Island, which is where he left the main body of his men. So, but tracing back Elephant Island, you'll get to see the points of where, that's just off the north of the Antarctic Peninsula. You'll get to see the points where the men actually sheltered, the beach where they were actually at, which is Cape Wild. It's absolutely incredible. Just that feeling that these men were here for such a long period of time in such brutally harsh conditions, because the few times I've been past Elephant Island, it's been horrible weather, massive swells and pounding winds and freezing cold. It really gives a great perspective. And of course, if you're lucky enough to go into the Weddell Sea, Simon's touched upon, they've got a trip which does go into Weddell. The Weddell is an extreme environment, a lot more ice, a lot more pressures on the ice. They have this great circulatory current in the Weddell, and that's where you probably really get a sense of just what happened to the endurance ships. So there are lots of notable points, where you can follow his journey. I mean, to really do that though, you need to do the Antarctic South Georgia combination, I think, because then you get to go across this amazing sea, the Scotia Sea, which is the sea between Antarctic Peninsula North and South Georgia. And it's a fantastic story, and it really comes to light when you're down there, and hopefully you'll get great lectures. Oh,
I'm sure there will be. Well, I think this brings up that point again, that if anybody can spare the time or had the money, obviously, to do the South Georgia option as well as, then we all, I think, really recommend that. If you can't, of course, you're still going to have a brilliant time, but do.
I think it's the next level up. I mean, if you've done Antarctic Peninsula, which you'll be bowled over with, and you'll have an incredible time. If you want more, then South Georgia it just defies explanation almost. How much wildlife there is. The density is ridiculous. So I mean, just walking onto a beach and looking at 250,000 pairs of penguins, and you saying, "What do I do now?" You know, you're waving your camera around, and you just give up in the end and just enjoy the madness of the spectacle. So
it is incredible. And Simon, well, very quickly, somebody did ask, is it possible to do South Georgia without Antarctica?
We don't offer an itinerary at the moment with that. I don't know whether we might do in the future, but all the trips that do South Georgia include the Falklands and Antarctica as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. And somebody has asked about the 40% discount. Does it have to be through Trailfinders? Just double checking, really. Has it got to be through Trailfinders and not through Booking Direct?
Yes. So that offers exclusive to Trailfinders. So it'll be through them.
Yeah, who of course are a great company. Really good. Okay, well, I think unfortunately we're out of time. I might just ask you one very sneaky question yet. Just to say to people who still are on course as well, that just to reiterate, we will be sending out that follow-up email, and any questions that haven't been answered by Simon or Mark, we'll try and put them in there as well. So don't fret if your question hasn't been covered. So last question. Well, for Mark, I think I've got to ask you what the gestation period of a Gentoo penguin is.
31 to 39 days. Preparation is 98% of success.
I knew you'd look it up. Brilliant. And Simon, I'm not going to be as cruel as that. What's your favourite Antarctica critter? What's when you go back down? What is the species you're absolutely going to be looking out for?
I mean, all of them kind of bring you these different sort of elements of joy and intrigue, and just wonder at how they survive down there. I think for me, the Adelie penguins, they're just absolutely beautiful creatures. I mean, all the penguins are amazing. They're all so inquisitive with the little waddle, and they've just got such character about them. But for me, the Adelies they're just absolutely beautiful, really stunning to look at. So I'm very much looking forward to them. And I think on the Weddell seaside where I'm going, there's a couple of really big colonies there. So I'm hoping we're going to see some good sightings with those. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, that's got us so inspired. I see we're getting lots of love in the chat box. So thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, and a massive thank you to Simon and to Mark for your insights and your inspiration. That was brilliant. Somebody, quick question, Mark, what red wine are you drinking?
It's a Shiraz. Very nice, actually.
Shiraz. I might have to go and have a glass of that
myself. It's a Shiraz. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I'm not drinking the whole bottle, though. I have got somebody else here with me, and I'm enjoying it.
We haven't driven you to knocking back a whole bottle yourself. No, okay, well, thank you so much again. Yeah, so thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mark. That was an absolute joy. And thanks to Matt and to Jess, who've been in the chat box and doing a great job in there too. So good night, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.